Your mind is betraying you every single day. Right now, as you listen to this, your brain is making thousands of decisions without your conscious awareness, and most of them are wrong. The average person makes about 35,000 decisions per day, and research shows that 95% of these decisions are made subconsciously using mental shortcuts that were designed for a world that no longer exists. Every day, you choose what to eat, who to trust, where to invest your time, which opportunities to pursue, and which to ignore. These decisions shape your relationships, your career, your health, and ultimately, your entire life. Yet most people have never been taught how to think clearly or make decisions strategically. The brutal truth is this: your current decision-making process is the reason you are where you are right now. If you want different results, you need a different system. If you want to think with the clarity of the world's most successful people, you need to understand how clear thinking actually works. By the end of this audiobook, you will have a complete mental operating system for making better decisions. You will know how to cut through confusion, eliminate emotional interference, and make choices with the confidence of someone who sees the future before it happens. But this only works if you commit to applying what you learn. Most people will listen to this and do nothing. Don't be most people. Chapter 1. The Hidden Forces that Control Your Decisions. Every decision you make is influenced by forces you cannot see. And until you understand these forces, you will never have true control over your choices. The biggest mistake people make is believing that they are rational decision makers. The science is clear. Human beings are not rational. We are rationalizing. We make decisions emotionally, and then create logical reasons to justify what we already chose. Your brain evolved over millions of years to keep you alive in a dangerous world, not to help you thrive in a complex modern society. The mental shortcuts that helped your ancestors survive, things like avoiding anything unfamiliar, seeking immediate gratification, and following the crowd, are now the very things that sabotage your success. Consider the availability heuristic. Your brain estimates the probability of events based on how easily you can remember similar situations. This is why people are terrified of plane crashes but drive without fear, even though driving is statistically far more dangerous. Your brain gives more weight to vivid, recent memories than to actual data, leading you to make decisions based on fear rather than facts. Then there's confirmation bias, perhaps the most destructive force in human decision-making. Once you believe something, your brain actively seeks information that confirms this belief, while ignoring or dismissing contradictory evidence. This isn't a character flaw, it's how your brain is wired. But it means that without conscious intervention, you will continue making the same types of decisions and getting the same results forever. Social proof is another invisible puppeteer pulling your strings. When you're uncertain about what to do, your brain looks around to see what others are doing and assumes that must be correct. This leads to herd mentality, where entire groups of people make obviously bad decisions because everyone else is doing it. The financial bubbles throughout history, from tulips to dot-com stocks to real estate, all happened because people followed the crowd instead of thinking independently. Loss aversion makes you twice as motivated to avoid losing something as you are to gain something of equal value. This causes you to hold on to bad investments, stay in unfulfilling relationships, and remain in jobs that drain your soul simply because the fear of loss is stronger than the desire for gain. You become a prisoner of your current situation, not because you lack options, but because your brain treats any change as a potential threat. The sunk cost fallacy tricks you into continuing failed projects because you've already invested time, money, or effort. Your brain cannot accept that these resources are gone forever, so it convinces you to throw more resources at a losing proposition. This is why people stay in college majors they hate, continue relationships that aren't working, and keep funding business ventures that will never succeed. Anchoring bias ensures that the first piece of information you receive about any decision disproportionately influences your final choice. Salespeople exploit this by showing you the most expensive option first, making everything else seem reasonable by comparison. Your brain uses this initial anchor as a reference point, even when it's completely irrelevant to the decision at hand. The planning fallacy causes you to systematically underestimate how long tasks will take and overestimate your ability to complete them. This isn't optimism. It's a cognitive blind spot that leads to missed deadlines, broken promises, and chronic stress. Your brain focuses on the best-case scenario while ignoring the countless ways things can go wrong. Understanding these biases is just the beginning. The real power comes from building systems that account for these mental limitations and force you to think more clearly. The most successful people in the world are not immune to these biases. They simply have better decision-making processes that minimize their impact. Chapter 2. The Architecture of Clear Thinking. Clear thinking is not a talent you're born with. It's a skill you can develop through deliberate practice. But first, you need to understand what clear thinking actually means. Most people confuse clear thinking with smart thinking, but they are completely different. Smart thinking involves having knowledge and processing information quickly. Clear thinking involves seeing reality accurately and making decisions based on what is, not what you wish were true. The foundation of clear thinking is emotional regulation. Your emotions are not just feelings, they are information processing systems that evolved to help you make quick decisions in life or death situations. Fear tells you to avoid danger. Anger prepares you to fight. Joy encourages you to pursue rewards. These emotional systems are incredibly powerful, but they are also incredibly crude. When you're angry, your brain literally shuts down the prefrontal cortex, the area responsible for rational thinking, and diverts energy to the limbic system, which controls fight or flight responses. This is why you make terrible decisions when you're emotionally activated. The first rule of clear thinking is never make important decisions when you're in an emotional state. But emotions aren't just obstacles to clear thinking. They're also essential sources of information. Your gut feelings often contain wisdom that your logical mind cannot access. The key is learning to distinguish between emotions that provide useful information and emotions that cloud your judgment. Fear of physical danger? Listen to it. Fear of embarrassment? Question it. Excitement about a new opportunity? Valuable data. Excitement about get-rich-quick schemes? Proceed with caution. The second pillar of clear thinking is perspective management. Your brain can only process a tiny fraction of available information at any given moment, so it filters reality through the lens of your current concerns, beliefs, and emotions. This filtering process determines what you notice, what you ignore, and how you interpret events. Change your perspective, and you literally change your reality. One of the most powerful perspective tools is time shifting. When facing a difficult decision, ask yourself, how will I feel about this choice in 10 minutes? 10 months? 10 years? This simple exercise immediately reveals whether you're optimizing for short-term comfort or long-term success. Most people make decisions that feel good now, but create problems later. Clear thinkers make decisions that might be uncomfortable now, but create better futures. Another crucial perspective shift is stakeholder analysis. Every decision affects multiple people, including future versions of yourself. Before making any important choice, identify everyone who will be impacted and consider their interests. This prevents you from making selfish decisions that create long-term relationship problems or harm your reputation. The third element of clear thinking is information quality control. Your decision quality is directly proportional to your information quality. But most people are terrible at evaluating sources. They treat opinions as facts, mistake correlation for causation, and base major life decisions on anecdotal evidence from friends and family. High-quality information has three characteristics. It's accurate, it's relevant, and it's recent. Accurate means it reflects reality, not someone's interpretation of reality. Relevant means it actually applies to your specific situation. Recent means it accounts for current conditions, not outdated assumptions. The fourth component is systems thinking. Most people think in terms of events and immediate causes. Clear thinkers see patterns, connections, and underlying structures. They understand that everything is connected to everything else, and that small changes in one area can create massive effects elsewhere. When evaluating any decision, ask yourself, what are the second-order consequences? What happens after what happens? If I take this action, what reactions will it create? How might those reactions affect other areas of my life? This level of thinking is what separates good decision-makers from great ones. The final element is intellectual humility. Clear thinking requires admitting what you don't know and actively seeking information that contradicts your existing beliefs. This is incredibly difficult because your ego is invested in being right, but it's absolutely essential for making good decisions in a complex world. Practice saying, I don't know, more often. Actively seek out people who disagree with you. Question your own assumptions as rigorously as you question others. Remember that being wrong is not a character flaw. It's information that helps you make better decisions in the future. Chapter 3. Emotional Intelligence and Decision Making. Your emotions are not the enemy of good decision-making. They are powerful sources of information that, when properly understood and managed, can dramatically improve your judgment. The problem is that most people either ignore their emotions completely or let them run their lives. Both approaches lead to poor decisions. Emotional intelligence in decision-making starts with emotional awareness. Most people experience emotions without understanding what those emotions are trying to tell them. Fear might be warning you about genuine danger, or it might be protecting you from growth opportunities. Anger might be alerting you to injustice, or it might be masking hurt feelings. Excitement might be guiding you toward your purpose, or it might be a response to novelty that will fade quickly. The key is learning to decode your emotional signals. When you feel a strong emotion about a potential decision, pause and investigate. What specifically is triggering this emotion? What is your body trying to tell you? What past experiences might be influencing your reaction? This emotional archaeology often reveals insights that pure logic cannot provide. Anxiety, for example, is not just stress. It's your brain's way of telling you that it perceives a threat to something you value. If you're anxious about a job interview, your brain is signaling that this opportunity matters to you and that there's uncertainty about the outcome. This is valuable information. But anxiety can also be triggered by irrational fears based on past experiences that no longer apply to your current situation. The solution is not to ignore anxiety or be paralyzed by it, but to interrogate it. What specifically are you afraid will happen? How likely is this outcome based on current evidence? What would you do if this fear materialized? Often, simply thinking through your worst-case scenarios reduces their emotional impact and helps you make more rational decisions. Regret is another emotion that provides crucial decision-making data. Research shows that people experience two types of regret: regret over actions taken and regret over actions not taken. Interestingly, in the short term, people regret actions they took. But in the long term, people regret actions they didn't take. This suggests that when facing uncertainty, the bigger risk is usually inaction, not action. Use this knowledge to counteract your brain's natural bias toward the status quo. When considering a potentially life-changing decision, imagine yourself 10 years from now, looking back. Will you regret taking the risk, or will you regret playing it safe? This mental exercise helps you overcome the fear of immediate discomfort and focus on long-term fulfillment. Guilt and shame are emotions that often masquerade as moral guidance, but actually cloud judgment. Guilt tells you that you did something wrong. Shame tells you that you are something wrong. Both emotions can be useful in small doses. They help you maintain social bonds and moral standards. But when they become dominant factors in decision-making, they lead to choices based on avoiding disapproval rather than pursuing what's best for your life. Learn to distinguish between healthy guilt that motivates positive change and toxic guilt that keeps you trapped in other people's expectations. Ask yourself, whose standards am I trying to meet? Are these standards helping me become the person I want to be, or are they holding me back? Sometimes the most moral thing you can do is disappoint people who have unrealistic expectations of you. Pride is perhaps the most dangerous emotion in decision-making because it feels so positive. Pride makes you overconfident in your abilities, resistant to feedback, and unwilling to admit mistakes. It causes you to escalate failing projects, reject help when you need it, and make decisions based on protecting your ego rather than achieving your goals. Combat pride by actively seeking disconfirming evidence for your beliefs and decisions. Surround yourself with people who will challenge your thinking. Celebrate being wrong when it leads to better information. Remember that your goal is not to be right. It's to get the best possible outcomes. Love, both romantic and familial, can also distort decision-making. Love makes you want to protect and please the people you care about, which often means making decisions that feel good in the moment, but create problems later. You might avoid having difficult conversations, enable destructive behavior, or sacrifice your own growth to maintain harmony. The highest form of love is sometimes saying no to immediate requests in service of long-term well-being. This applies to parenting, romantic relationships, and friendships. Clear thinking requires distinguishing between decisions that feel loving and decisions that actually serve love. Developing emotional intelligence for decision-making is an ongoing practice. Start by creating space between stimulus and response. When facing any significant decision, implement a cooling-off period. Sleep on it. Discuss it with trusted advisors. Journal about your feelings. This space allows your emotional wisdom to emerge while preventing emotional reactivity from hijacking your judgment. Chapter 4. The decision-making framework that never fails. Most people make decisions randomly, using whatever process feels right in the moment. This approach guarantees inconsistent results and missed opportunities. The most successful people in the world use systematic frameworks that ensure they consider all relevant factors and make choices aligned with their values and goals. The CLEAR framework is a comprehensive decision-making system that works for everything from daily choices to life-changing decisions. CLEAR stands for clarify, list, evaluate, act, and review. Each step has specific tools and questions designed to minimize bias and maximize the quality of your decisions. Clarify means defining exactly what decision you're trying to make and why it matters. This sounds obvious, but most people jump straight to evaluating options without clearly understanding the problem they're solving. Spend time articulating the real issue. Are you deciding whether to quit your job? Or are you deciding how to find more fulfillment in your career? Are you deciding whether to end a relationship? Or are you deciding how to improve communication with your partner? The way you frame the decision dramatically influences the solutions you consider. Write down your decision in one clear sentence. Then ask yourself, what outcome am I really trying to achieve? What values are most important to me in this situation? What are the stakes if I get this wrong? This clarification process often reveals that you're not facing the decision you thought you were facing. List means generating a comprehensive set of options. Most people consider only 2 or 3 alternatives, usually the most obvious ones. This limited thinking leads to suboptimal choices. Force yourself to brainstorm at least 5 different approaches to any important decision. Include options that seem unrealistic or unconventional. Often, the best solution is hidden among the alternatives you initially dismiss. Use the "What would X do?" technique to expand your thinking. Consider how different types of people might approach your situation. What would the most successful person in your field do? What would someone with unlimited resources do? What would someone with no resources do? What would your role model do? Each perspective reveals different possibilities. Also consider combination approaches. Instead of choosing between option A and option B, ask whether there's a way to get the benefits of both. Instead of all or nothing thinking, explore partial solutions, phased approaches, and creative compromises. The best decisions often involve elements that weren't obvious initially. Evaluate means systematically assessing each option against your criteria. Create a decision matrix with your options listed vertically and your evaluation criteria listed horizontally. Your criteria might include things like financial impact, time investment, stress level, growth potential, alignment with values, and effect on relationships. Rate each option on each criterion using a consistent scale. This process forces you to consider factors you might otherwise overlook and prevents one dramatic pro or con from overwhelming your judgment. Weight the criteria based on their importance to you. A decision matrix turns fuzzy thinking into clear comparisons. But don't rely solely on quantitative analysis. Numbers can't capture everything that matters. After completing your matrix, step back and consider your gut reaction. Which option feels right? Which option energizes you? Which option aligns with the person you want to become? Sometimes, your intuition notices patterns that your logical mind cannot process. Act means making the decision and committing to it fully. This is where most people fail. They analyze endlessly, seeking perfect information that doesn't exist. They want certainty in an uncertain world. Remember that not deciding is itself a decision. Usually, a decision to maintain the status quo. Set a decision deadline and stick to it. Most decisions can be made with 70% of the information you wish you had. Waiting for more information often costs more than making a slightly imperfect decision quickly. The goal is not to make perfect decisions, it's to make good decisions consistently and then execute them effectively. Once you decide, eliminate second-guessing. Commit mental energy to implementation, not reconsideration. This doesn't mean ignoring new information, but it does mean resisting the urge to revisit settled decisions unless circumstances change dramatically. Review means analyzing your decision after implementation to improve your future decision-making. Most people make decisions and then forget about them, missing valuable learning opportunities. Create a decision journal where you record important choices, your reasoning, and the eventual outcomes. Schedule regular reviews of past decisions. What did you get right? What did you get wrong? What patterns do you notice in your decision-making? Which types of decisions do you handle well, and which types give you trouble? This analysis helps you recognize your blind spots and biases, making your future decisions progressively better. Pay special attention to decisions that surprised you, either positively or negatively. What factors did you overlook? What assumptions turned out to be wrong? How could you have gathered better information? This review process transforms every decision into a learning opportunity that improves your judgment over time. The clear framework works because it combines rational analysis with emotional intelligence, forces you to consider multiple perspectives, and builds learning into the process. Use it consistently, and your decision-making will become one of your greatest competitive advantages. Chapter 5. How to think long-term in a short-term world. The ability to think long-term is perhaps the most valuable cognitive skill you can develop. Yet, it's becoming increasingly rare in our instant gratification culture. Every day, you're surrounded by distractions designed to capture your immediate attention and prevent deep thinking. Social media notifications, news cycles, and marketing messages all push you toward quick reactions and short-term thinking. But the most successful people in every field share one characteristic. They consistently make decisions based on long-term consequences rather than short-term comfort. They understand that time is the most powerful force in human affairs. and they align themselves with its flow rather than fighting against it. Long-term thinking starts with understanding compound effects. Most people vastly underestimate how small, consistent actions accumulate over time. They expect linear progress. If they save $100 this month, they expect to have $1,200 at the end of the year. But compound effects are exponential. Small improvements in your decision-making quality compound into dramatically better life outcomes over years and decades. Consider the compound effect of reading. If you read for just 30 minutes per day, you'll complete roughly 25 books per year. Over a decade, that's 250 books. Enough knowledge to become an expert in multiple fields. Most people know this intellectually, but they choose immediate entertainment over long-term growth because the benefits of reading aren't visible immediately. The same principle applies to relationships, health, skills, and wealth. Small daily investments compound into massive long-term advantages, but only if you can resist the temptation of immediate gratification. This is why long-term thinking is so difficult. It requires sacrificing certain short-term pleasures for uncertain long-term benefits. To develop long-term thinking, you must train yourself to see the invisible connections between present actions and future outcomes. Every decision you make today is creating the conditions for your life in 5, 10, or 20 years. The job you take shapes the skills you develop and the network you build. The relationships you invest in determine your social support system. The habits you form determine your health and productivity. Start by conducting regular future self exercises. Imagine yourself at different stages of life. 1 year from now, 5 years from now, 20 years from now. What does your future self need you to do today? What decisions would your future self thank you for? What choices would your future self regret? This mental time travel helps you make decisions based on long-term impact rather than immediate convenience. Create vivid mental images of your long-term goals. The more specific and emotional these images, the more motivating they become. Don't just think about having more money. Imagine the specific experiences that money will enable. Don't just think about being healthier. Imagine how you'll feel walking upstairs without getting winded, or playing with your grandchildren without pain. Long-term thinking also requires developing patience for delayed gratification. This is a learnable skill that you can strengthen through practice. Start with small experiments. Choose the longer line at the grocery store instead of trying to find the fastest one. Take the stairs instead of the elevator. Read a book instead of watching TV. These micro-practices build your tolerance for delayed rewards. Understand the difference between urgent and important. Urgent tasks demand immediate attention but often have minimal long-term impact. Important tasks contribute to your long-term goals but rarely feel urgent. Most people spend their lives reacting to urgent tasks while neglecting important ones. Long-term thinkers flip this priority system. Use the 10th of October 2010 rule for decision-making. Before making any significant choice, ask yourself, how will I feel about this decision in 10 minutes? How about 10 months? How about 10 years? This simple exercise immediately reveals whether you're optimizing for short-term comfort or long-term success. Learn to recognize and resist the tyranny of the immediate. Our culture is designed to make everything feel urgent. Email notifications, social media updates, news alerts, they all trigger your brain's urgency response. But true urgency is rare. Most urgent matters are simply other people's poor planning imposed on your schedule. Create buffer time in your schedule for thinking and planning. Long-term thinking requires mental space that's impossible to find when you're constantly reactive. Schedule regular strategic sessions with yourself. Review your goals, assess your progress, and adjust your strategies. This investment of time in thinking pays massive dividends in better decisions. Build systems that make long-term thinking easier. Automate savings so you invest for the future without thinking about it. Create workout schedules so fitness becomes routine rather than a daily decision. Establish learning habits so skill development happens consistently. The goal is to make beneficial long-term behaviors as automatic as possible. Finally, accept that long-term thinking sometimes requires short-term sacrifice. You might need to say no to social events, to work on important projects. You might need to invest money instead of spending it on immediate pleasures. You might need to have difficult conversations instead of avoiding conflict. These short-term costs are investments in long-term freedom and success. The ability to think long-term is what separates those who create extraordinary lives from those who merely react to circumstances. It's the foundation of all strategic thinking and the key to making decisions that compound into remarkable outcomes over time. Chapter 6. Mental Models. The Secret Weapons of Great Decision Makers. Mental models are thinking tools that help you understand how the world works and make better predictions about what will happen next. They are the cognitive frameworks that separate world-class decision-makers from everyone else. While most people rely on intuition and hope, great decision-makers use proven mental models to cut through complexity and see patterns that others miss. Think of mental models as lenses through which you view reality. The more accurate lenses you have, the clearer your vision becomes. Most people stumble through life with just a few mental models, usually picked up randomly through experience. But the most successful people systematically collect and apply dozens of mental models from multiple disciplines. The first mental model every clear thinker must master is first principles thinking. This involves breaking down complex problems into their fundamental components and reasoning up from basic truths rather than reasoning by analogy. Most people make decisions by copying what others have done or following conventional wisdom. First principles thinkers question everything and build solutions from the ground up. When Elon Musk wanted to make space travel cheaper, he didn't accept the industry assumption that rockets were expensive. Instead, he broke down a rocket into its component materials and discovered that the raw materials cost only a fraction of the rocket's price. This first principles analysis led to SpaceX's reusable rocket technology, which revolutionized the industry. Apply first principles thinking to your own decisions by asking, what do I know to be true? What am I assuming that might not be correct? If I had to solve this problem from scratch, with no existing solutions to copy, what would I do? This approach often reveals opportunities that conventional thinking misses. The second essential mental model is inversion. Instead of thinking about what you want to happen, think about what you want to avoid. Instead of asking, how can I succeed? Ask, how can I fail? This mental reversal often provides clearer guidance than positive thinking alone. Charlie Munger, Warren Buffett's partner, attributes much of his success to inversion. Instead of trying to be smart, he tries to avoid being stupid. Instead of looking for great investments, he looks for obvious mistakes to avoid. This approach has helped Berkshire Hathaway outperform the market for decades. Use inversion in your personal decisions by identifying the worst possible outcomes and working backward. If you're considering a career change, don't just think about the benefits. Think about what could go wrong and how you would handle those scenarios. If you're starting a business, identify the most likely reasons for failure and build systems to prevent them. The third critical mental model is opportunity cost. Every decision you make eliminates other possibilities. When you choose to spend time on one activity, you're choosing not to spend it on everything else. When you invest money in one area, you can't invest it elsewhere. Understanding opportunity cost helps you make decisions that maximize your overall results rather than optimizing individual choices. Most people think about the cost of action but ignore the cost of inaction. They worry about the money they might lose on an investment, but don't consider the wealth they might miss by keeping money in low-yield savings accounts. They fear the discomfort of difficult conversations but don't calculate the cost of avoiding them indefinitely. Before making any significant decision, ask yourself, what am I giving up by choosing this option? What other opportunities might I miss? Is this the best possible use of my time, energy, and resources? This opportunity cost analysis prevents you from pursuing good opportunities that prevent you from pursuing great ones. The fourth mental model is leverage. Small actions can produce disproportionately large results when applied at the right point in a system. Archimedes said, "Give me a lever long enough and a place to stand, and I will move the earth." The same principle applies to decision-making. Find the leverage points that create maximum impact with minimum effort. In your career, leverage might mean developing skills that are rare and valuable rather than common and easily replaceable. In relationships, leverage might mean addressing core communication patterns rather than arguing about surface-level issues. In health, leverage might mean changing your environment to make good choices easier rather than relying on willpower alone. Look for leverage points by asking, what's the smallest change that would create the biggest improvement? Where can I get the highest return on my investment of time and energy? What's the root cause that, if addressed, would solve multiple problems at once? The fifth mental model is systems thinking. Most people see events in isolation, but everything is connected to everything else. Your decisions create ripple effects that influence other areas of your life, often in ways you don't expect. Systems thinkers see these connections and use them to their advantage. For example, your sleep quality affects your decision-making ability, which affects your work performance, which affects your income, which affects your stress level, which affects your relationships, which affects your happiness. Most people try to fix each area separately, but systems thinkers recognize that improving sleep might be the leverage point that improves everything else. When facing any decision, ask yourself, how does this connect to other areas of my life? What second-order and third-order effects might this decision create? How might this choice influence my future options? This systems perspective helps you make decisions that improve your life holistically rather than just solving immediate problems. The sixth mental model is the 80/20 principle, also known as Pareto's law. In most situations, roughly 80% of effects come from 20% of causes. This pattern appears everywhere. 80% of your results come from 20% of your activities. 80% of your stress comes from 20% of your problems. 80% of your happiness comes from 20% of your relationships. The 80/20 principle is a decision-making superpower because it helps you identify what matters most. Instead of trying to do everything, focus on the vital few activities that produce most of your results. Instead of trying to solve every problem, focus on the critical issues that create most of your stress. Use 80/20 analysis by regularly auditing your time and energy. What activities produce the most value in your work? Which relationships bring you the most joy? What problems create the most disruption in your life? Once you identify the vital 20%, you can make better decisions about where to focus your limited resources. The seventh mental model is probabilistic thinking. Most people think in terms of certainties that don't exist. They want to know what will happen, but the future is always uncertain. Probabilistic thinkers don't try to predict the future. They think in terms of likely outcomes and make decisions that position them well regardless of what happens. Instead of asking, "Will this work?" ask, "What's the probability this will work, and what happens if it doesn't?" Instead of seeking guarantees, seek favorable odds. This mindset helps you make better decisions under uncertainty and prevents you from being paralyzed by the impossibility of perfect information. Mental models are not just intellectual concepts. They are practical tools that become more powerful with practice. Start by mastering one or two models that resonate with you, then gradually add others to your toolkit. The goal is not to memorize every mental model, but to develop the habit of systematic thinking that mental models represent. Chapter 7. Decision-making under pressure and uncertainty. The quality of your decisions under pressure reveals your true decision-making ability. Anyone can make good choices when they have unlimited time, perfect information, and no emotional stress. But real life doesn't offer such luxuries. The decisions that matter most, career moves, relationship choices, investment opportunities, crisis responses, often must be made quickly, with incomplete information, while experiencing significant stress. Pressure distorts your thinking in predictable ways. It narrows your attention, making you focus on immediate threats while ignoring long-term consequences. It triggers emotional responses that override rational analysis. It creates a sense of urgency that pushes you toward quick fixes rather than optimal solutions. Understanding these pressure-induced distortions is the first step to making better decisions when stakes are high. The first principle of decision-making under pressure is to slow down your mental process, even when external time pressure is high. This seems counterintuitive, but rushed thinking leads to poor decisions that create bigger problems later. Even when you only have minutes to decide, you can use those minutes more effectively by following a systematic process. Start with what military professionals call the OODA loop. Observe, orient, decide, act. Observe means gathering the essential facts about your situation without jumping to conclusions. What exactly is happening? What information do you have? And what information do you need? Orient means understanding your position relative to your goals and values. What are you trying to achieve? What are your non-negotiables? Decide means choosing your course of action based on your analysis. Act means implementing your decision with full commitment. This process takes practice to become automatic. In low-pressure situations, consciously walk through the ODA loop to build the habit. When real pressure arrives, your trained mind will naturally follow this pattern, helping you make better decisions even under extreme stress. The second principle is to prepare decision frameworks in advance. You can't predict exactly what crises you'll face, but you can identify the types of decisions you're likely to encounter and create frameworks for handling them. This preparation allows you to make better choices quickly when pressure hits. For example, if you're an entrepreneur, create frameworks for handling cash flow crises, key employee departures, and competitive threats. If you're a parent, create frameworks for handling medical emergencies, behavioral problems, and educational decisions. If you're an investor, create frameworks for market crashes, unexpected opportunities, and personal financial pressures. These frameworks should include your core values, decision criteria, and predetermined actions for common scenarios. When pressure hits, you won't have to think through your values from scratch. You'll have a pre-built foundation for making consistent decisions that align with your long-term interests. The third principle is stress inoculation. Just as vaccines expose you to small amounts of disease to build immunity, stress inoculation exposes you to manageable amounts of pressure to build decision-making resilience. The military uses this technique to prepare soldiers for combat. Athletes use it to perform under competition pressure. You can use it to improve your decision-making under stress. Deliberately put yourself in low-stakes pressure situations. Take on public speaking opportunities. Try competitive activities. Set aggressive but achievable deadlines for important projects. Practice having difficult conversations. Each experience builds your tolerance for pressure and improves your ability to think clearly when stakes are high. The fourth principle is uncertainty management. Uncertainty is not the absence of information. It's the presence of multiple possible outcomes. Most people try to eliminate uncertainty by gathering more information, but this often leads to analysis paralysis. Instead of trying to eliminate uncertainty, learn to make good decisions despite it. Use scenario planning to prepare for multiple possible futures. Instead of trying to predict what will happen, identify 3 to 5 plausible outcomes and create contingency plans for each. This preparation helps you respond quickly and appropriately regardless of which scenario unfolds. Also, distinguish between reducible uncertainty and irreducible uncertainty. Reducible uncertainty can be decreased through research, analysis, and information gathering. Irreducible uncertainty is inherent to the situation and cannot be eliminated. Spend your limited time and energy reducing uncertainties that can actually be reduced, and accept those that cannot. The fifth principle is emotional regulation under pressure. Pressure creates strong emotions that can either enhance or impair your decision-making. Fear can provide valuable caution, but it can also paralyze you. Excitement can provide motivating energy, but it can also lead to reckless choices. Anger can provide determined focus, but it can also blind you to important considerations. Develop techniques for managing your emotional state during high-pressure decisions. Deep breathing activates your parasympathetic nervous system and counteracts stress responses. Physical movement helps discharge nervous energy and clear your thinking. Positive self-talk replaces panic-inducing thoughts with confidence-building ones. Create emotional anchors, phrases, images, or memories that instantly reconnect you with your core identity and values. When pressure threatens to overwhelm your judgment, these anchors help you return to center and make decisions aligned with who you really are, rather than who stress makes you become. The sixth principle is resource allocation under pressure. When time and energy are limited, you must be ruthless about how you use them. Don't spend equal time on all aspects of a decision. Focus most of your attention on the factors that will have the biggest impact on the outcome. Use the 80/20 principle under pressure. Identify the 20% of considerations that will determine 80% of the result. Spend most of your time analyzing these critical factors and make reasonable assumptions about the rest. Perfect analysis is impossible under pressure, but good enough analysis focused on the right things often leads to excellent decisions. The seventh principle is team decision-making under pressure. Many high-pressure decisions involve other people, and group dynamics under stress can either improve or impair judgment. Pressure often causes teams to rush toward consensus without proper debate, or to become paralyzed by conflicting opinions. When leading group decisions under pressure, assign specific roles. Someone to advocate for different options, someone to play devil's advocate, someone to focus on long-term consequences, someone to monitor group dynamics. This structure prevents groupthink and ensures that important perspectives are considered even when time is short. Finally, remember that not all pressure is created equal. Learn to distinguish between real urgency and artificial urgency. Real urgency involves situations where delay creates genuine costs or risks. Artificial urgency is created by other people's poor planning, emotional manipulation, or cultural expectations that don't align with your actual priorities. Before accepting pressure as legitimate, ask yourself, what exactly happens if I take more time to decide? Who benefits from a quick decision? And who benefits from a careful one? Am I being pressured to choose quickly because that serves someone else's interests rather than my own? Mastering decision-making under pressure is one of the most valuable skills you can develop. It separates leaders from followers, entrepreneurs from employees, and successful people from those who remain at the mercy of circumstances. Chapter 8. The social dimension of decision-making. Every important decision you make affects other people, and other people affect every decision you make. Yet most decision-making advice ignores this social reality and treats choices as if they happen in isolation. The truth is that your decisions are embedded in a complex web of relationships, social expectations, and group dynamics that dramatically influence both your choices and their outcomes. Understanding the social dimension of decision-making starts with recognizing that humans are fundamentally social creatures. Your brain evolved to prioritize group survival over individual optimization. This creates powerful unconscious forces that influence your choices in ways you might not realize. The need for approval, the fear of rejection, and the desire to conform all shape your decisions, often in ways that conflict with your individual best interests. Social proof is one of the most powerful forces in human decision-making. When you're uncertain about what to do, your brain automatically looks for evidence of what others are doing and assumes that must be correct. This heuristic worked well in ancestral environments, where following the group was usually the safest choice. But in modern society, social proof often leads to poor decisions because the crowd is frequently wrong. Financial bubbles provide perfect examples of social proof gone wrong. During the dot-com boom, people invested in companies with no profits because everyone else was doing it. During the housing bubble, people bought houses they couldn't afford because everyone else was doing it. In both cases, following the crowd led to disaster for those who didn't think independently. To make better social decisions, you must learn to distinguish between informed consensus and herd behavior. Informed consensus develops when knowledgeable people independently analyze a situation and reach similar conclusions. Herd behavior occurs when people copy others without independent analysis. The first provides valuable information. The second leads to collective delusion. Before following social proof, ask yourself, do these people have relevant expertise? Did they reach their conclusions independently? Or are they copying each other? What incentives might be influencing their choices? Are they facing the same situation I'm facing? Or are there important differences? This analysis helps you extract useful information from social signals while avoiding the trap of mindless conformity. Authority bias is another social force that distorts decision-making. People tend to defer to authority figures, even when those figures lack relevant expertise or have conflicting interests. This deference evolved because following legitimate authorities often led to better outcomes in traditional societies. But modern authority structures are complex, and many people in positions of authority are wrong about many things. The key is learning to evaluate authority claims critically. True expertise is domain-specific. Someone might be brilliant in one area and ignorant in another. Financial success doesn't necessarily translate to relationship wisdom. Academic credentials don't automatically confer practical knowledge. Celebrity status doesn't equal moral authority. When faced with authority-based advice, ask yourself, what qualifies this person to give advice on this specific topic? What evidence supports their claims? What incentives might be influencing their recommendations? Do other qualified experts agree or disagree? This critical evaluation helps you benefit from legitimate expertise while avoiding the costs of misplaced deference. Reciprocity creates another layer of social complexity in decision-making. When someone does something for you, you feel obligated to return the favor. This psychological tendency helps maintain social cooperation, but it can also be exploited by people who give you small gifts or favors to influence your larger decisions. Recognize reciprocity pressure by paying attention to the timing and context of favors. If someone does something nice for you right before asking for something significant, they might be trying to trigger reciprocity bias. This doesn't mean you should reject all favors, but you should make decisions based on merit rather than obligation. Commitment and consistency pressures also influence social decision-making. Once you take a public position, you feel pressure to act consistently with that position even when circumstances change. This consistency drive helps build trust and reliability in relationships, but it can also trap you in bad decisions that you're reluctant to reverse. Combat unhealthy consistency pressure by separating your identity from your positions. You are not your opinions. Changing your mind based on new evidence is a sign of intelligence, not weakness. When you find yourself defending a position mainly because you stated it publicly, pause and reconsider based on current information rather than past commitments. Group decision-making adds additional layers of complexity. Groups can make better decisions than individuals by combining different perspectives and knowledge. But groups can also make worse decisions due to groupthink, diffusion of responsibility, and social loafing. The key is structuring group processes to maximize the benefits while minimizing the risks. Effective group decision-making requires psychological safety. The confidence that you can express disagreement without damaging relationships or facing retaliation. Without psychological safety, groups tend toward false consensus where everyone publicly agrees while privately harboring doubts. Create psychological safety by encouraging dissent, rewarding people who raise concerns, and modeling intellectual humility. Use structured decision processes in groups to prevent the loudest voices from dominating. Techniques like silent brainstorming, anonymous voting, and rotating leadership help ensure that all perspectives are heard. Assign someone to play devil's advocate for important decisions. This creates permission for criticism that might otherwise be suppressed. Family dynamics create some of the most complex social decision-making challenges. Family relationships involve deep emotional bonds, long histories, and conflicting loyalties that can cloud judgment. The desire to please family members or maintain family harmony often leads to decisions that serve others' expectations rather than your own best interests. Healthy family decision-making requires clear boundaries between your choices and others' expectations. You can love your family while making decisions that disappoint them. You can consider their input while maintaining final authority over your own life. The most loving thing you can do for family members is sometimes refusing to enable their dysfunctional patterns or unrealistic demands. Professional relationships create different social pressures. Office politics, career advancement concerns, and workplace cultures all influence decision-making in ways that don't always align with optimal outcomes. The key is understanding these influences while maintaining your integrity and long-term perspective. Build a diverse network of advisors who can provide different perspectives on your decisions. Include people who share your values and people who challenge your assumptions. Include people who know your industry and people who bring outside perspectives. Include people who support your goals and people who question whether those goals are right for you. The social dimension of decision-making is not an obstacle to overcome. It's a reality to navigate skillfully. The best decisions often involve other people and benefit from social input. But you must learn to extract value from social information while maintaining your independence of thought and alignment with your authentic values and goals. Chapter 9. Strategic Thinking and Opportunity Recognition. Strategic thinking is the ability to see patterns, connections, and possibilities that others miss. It's the difference between playing checkers and playing chess. Checkers players react to immediate moves, while chess players think several moves ahead and position themselves for long-term advantage. In life and business, strategic thinkers consistently outperform tactical thinkers because they make decisions based on where the game is going, not where it is right now. Most people live reactively, responding to whatever happens to them. Strategic thinkers live proactively, creating the conditions that lead to their desired outcomes. They understand that every situation contains hidden opportunities and threats that only become visible to those who know how to look. Developing this strategic vision is not a mystical talent. It's a learnable skill that improves with practice. The foundation of strategic thinking is pattern recognition. Successful strategies are rarely completely original. They usually involve applying proven patterns from one context to a new situation. The ability to see these transferable patterns gives strategic thinkers a massive advantage in identifying opportunities before they become obvious to everyone else. Start building pattern recognition by studying successful strategies across different domains. How did Amazon move from books to everything? How did Apple transform from computers to lifestyle products? How did Netflix evolve from DVDs to streaming to content creation? Each evolution followed strategic patterns that you can apply to your own decisions. Look for patterns in timing. Most successful moves happen when conditions are changing, but before the change is complete. Amazon entered cloud computing before most people understood what it was. Tesla entered electric vehicles before charging infrastructure was ready. The key is identifying inflection points, moments when small changes in input create large changes in output. Strategic thinkers also recognize that the best opportunities often look like problems to everyone else. When everyone sees a problem, they avoid it. When you see a problem that you can solve, you find opportunity. The ride-sharing industry emerged because entrepreneurs saw urban transportation problems as business opportunities. The fitness industry exploded because entrepreneurs saw health problems as market opportunities. Train yourself to reframe problems as opportunities by asking different questions. Instead of, "Why is this happening to me?" ask, "How can I benefit from this situation?" Instead of, "What's wrong here?" ask, "What's possible here?" Instead of, "Who's to blame?" ask, "What can I learn or gain?" This mental reframing reveals opportunities that pessimistic thinking obscures. Strategic thinking requires understanding multiple time horizons simultaneously. Every decision creates immediate effects, medium-term consequences, and long-term implications. Most people focus only on immediate effects, but strategic thinkers see the full timeline and make decisions that optimize for the long term, even when they create short-term costs. Consider how strategic thinkers approach education. While others see education as something you complete in your 20s, strategic thinkers see learning as a lifelong competitive advantage. They invest in education throughout their careers, even when the immediate benefits aren't clear, because they understand that knowledge compounds over time and creates options that don't exist otherwise. The same principle applies to relationships. Strategic thinkers invest in relationships before they need them. They help others succeed, provide value without immediate expectation of return, and build trust over time. When opportunities arise that require collaboration, they have a network ready to support them. Non-strategic thinkers try to build relationships only when they need something, which is usually too late. Strategic opportunity recognition also involves understanding value creation versus value capture. Value creation makes the overall pie bigger. Value capture involves getting a larger share of an existing pie. The biggest opportunities usually involve creating new value rather than fighting over existing value. Look for ways to create value for others while capturing some of that value for yourself. Instead of competing in existing markets, create new markets. Instead of taking customers from competitors, expand the total customer base. Instead of cutting costs, increase revenues. Value creation strategies tend to be more sustainable and profitable than value capture strategies. Timing is crucial in strategic thinking. The same strategy can succeed brilliantly or fail completely depending on when it's implemented. Strategic thinkers develop sensitivity to timing by understanding cycles, trends, and momentum. They know when to be early adopters, when to wait for markets to develop, and when to move quickly before windows close. Study different types of cycles that affect your decisions. Economic cycles create predictable patterns of expansion and contraction. Technology cycles create periods of innovation, followed by consolidation. Social cycles create shifts in values and preferences. Understanding these cycles helps you position yourself advantageously relative to where things are heading. Strategic thinkers also understand competitive dynamics. They don't just think about their own moves, they think about how others will respond to their moves and how they'll respond to those responses. This multi-level thinking helps them choose strategies that remain effective even after competitors react. Ask yourself, if my strategy succeeds, how will others respond? How can I maintain my advantage once it becomes visible to competitors? What would I do if I were competing against myself? This competitive analysis helps you choose strategies that are defensible over time rather than just effective initially. Resource allocation is another key element of strategic thinking. You have limited time, energy, and money. And strategic thinking means investing these resources where they'll create the maximum long-term impact. This often means saying no to good opportunities so you can say yes to great ones. Develop a strategic filter for evaluating opportunities. What are your core strengths? What markets or problems are you uniquely positioned to address? What resources do you have that others lack? What timing advantages can you exploit? Opportunities that align with multiple strategic factors are usually worth pursuing, while those that align with only one factor are usually distractions. Strategic thinking also involves scenario planning. Instead of betting everything on one predicted future, strategic thinkers prepare for multiple possible futures and position themselves to benefit regardless of which scenario unfolds. This approach reduces risk while maintaining upside potential. Create 3 to 5 scenarios for any major decision. What happens if conditions improve significantly? What happens if they stay roughly the same? What happens if they deteriorate? What happens if something unexpected occurs? Design strategies that work reasonably well across multiple scenarios, rather than optimizing for only one predicted outcome. Finally, strategic thinking requires patience and persistence. Most strategic advantages take time to develop, and most strategic opportunities require sustained effort to capture. In a world focused on quick wins and immediate gratification, the patience to play long-term games becomes a significant competitive advantage. Strategic thinking transforms you from someone who reacts to circumstances into someone who creates circumstances. It's the difference between being at the mercy of events and being in control of your destiny. Master strategic thinking, and you'll consistently find opportunities where others see only obstacles. Chapter 10. The Psychology of Implementation and Taking Action. The gap between knowing what to do and actually doing it is where most people fail. You can have perfect clarity about your decisions, brilliant strategies for achieving your goals, and all the motivation in the world, but none of it matters if you can't consistently translate decisions into actions. Implementation is where good intentions meet reality, and it's often where they die. The psychology of implementation is fundamentally different from the psychology of decision-making. Deciding requires analyzing options and choosing direction. Implementing requires overcoming resistance, maintaining consistency, and persisting through obstacles. These are completely different skill sets, which is why many people who are excellent at making decisions struggle with following through on them. Understanding implementation psychology starts with recognizing that your brain is wired to resist action, especially action that involves uncertainty, effort, or potential failure. This resistance served your ancestors well. Unnecessary action burned precious calories and exposed them to danger. But in modern life, this action resistance often prevents you from pursuing opportunities and achieving goals. The first principle of implementation psychology is to minimize the gap between decision and action. The longer you wait between deciding to do something and actually doing it, the less likely you are to follow through. Your initial motivation fades, competing priorities emerge, and your brain generates reasons why action isn't necessary or advisable. Implement the 2-minute rule for small actions. If something takes less than 2 minutes to do it immediately rather than adding it to your to-do list. For larger actions, take at least one concrete step within 24 hours of making the decision. This immediate action creates momentum and commits you psychologically to following through. The second principle is to make action easier than inaction. Your brain naturally chooses the path of least resistance, so you must engineer your environment to make good choices, the easiest choices. If you want to exercise more, lay out your workout clothes the night before. If you want to eat healthier, prepare healthy snacks in advance. If you want to read more, keep books in every room where you might have downtime. This environmental design is more powerful than willpower because it works automatically. Instead of relying on moment-to-moment decisions that drain mental energy, you create systems that guide behavior without conscious effort. The most successful people don't have more willpower. They have better systems. The third principle is progressive implementation. Most people try to change everything at once, which overwhelms their mental resources and leads to abandonment. Instead, implement changes gradually, building new habits one at a time until they become automatic before adding new ones. Start with the smallest possible version of your desired behavior. If you want to write a book, start by writing 1 sentence per day. If you want to learn a language, start with 5 minutes per day. If you want to build a business, start with 1 hour per week. These micro-commitments are psychologically manageable and create the foundation for larger changes. The fourth principle is accountability and tracking. What gets measured gets managed, and what gets shared gets done. Human beings are social creatures who are motivated by the approval of others and the desire to maintain consistent self-image. Use these psychological forces to support your implementation efforts. Find accountability partners who will check on your progress and hold you to your commitments. Join groups of people pursuing similar goals. Share your intentions publicly. Track your daily actions and review your progress regularly. These external pressures compensate for the internal resistance that naturally emerges when implementation becomes difficult. The fifth principle is implementation planning. Most people plan their decisions, but not their implementation. They know what they want to achieve, but haven't thought through the specific steps required to get there. This lack of implementation planning leads to confusion, delays, and abandonment when obstacles arise. Create detailed implementation plans that specify when, where, and how you'll take action. Use if-then planning to prepare for obstacles. If I feel like skipping my workout, then I'll do just 5 minutes. If I get distracted while working, then I'll close all browser tabs and use a timer. These pre-commitments help you respond effectively to predictable challenges. The sixth principle is energy management. Implementation requires mental and physical energy, and your energy levels fluctuate throughout the day. Most people ignore these energy patterns and try to force action when they're depleted. Smart implementers align their most important actions with their highest energy periods. Identify your peak energy times and protect them for your most important work. Handle routine tasks during low energy periods. Manage your energy like the finite resource it is, investing it strategically rather than wasting it on unimportant activities. Remember that decision-making itself uses energy, so reduce the number of decisions you have to make by creating routines and systems. The seventh principle is overcoming perfectionism. Perfectionism is often disguised procrastination. It gives you permission to delay action until conditions are perfect. But perfect conditions never exist, and perfectionist thinking prevents you from starting, learning, and improving through experience. Embrace good enough as a starting point. You can always improve something after you begin, but you can't improve something that doesn't exist. Set minimum viable standards for taking action, and resist the urge to polish and perfect before you start. Progress beats perfection every time. The eighth principle is failure resilience. Implementation inevitably involves setbacks, mistakes, and temporary failures. Most people interpret these setbacks as evidence that they should quit. Successful implementers expect setbacks and have systems for bouncing back quickly. Develop a failure protocol, a predetermined set of actions to take when things go wrong. This might include reviewing what went wrong, adjusting your approach, and getting back on track as quickly as possible. Treat failures as data points that inform improvement rather than verdicts on your capability. The ninth principle is celebration and reinforcement. Your brain learns through reward systems, and positive reinforcement strengthens the neural pathways associated with implementation. Most people skip this step, focusing only on what they haven't accomplished, rather than acknowledging their progress. Celebrate small wins consistently. This doesn't mean throwing a party for every minor achievement, but it does mean acknowledging progress and allowing yourself to feel good about taking action. This positive reinforcement makes implementation psychologically rewarding, which increases the likelihood that you'll continue. The final principle is systems thinking for implementation. Instead of relying on motivation and willpower, create systems that make implementation automatic. Design your life so that good choices happen naturally and bad choices require extra effort. This might mean automating financial investments so you save without thinking about it. It might mean meal planning, so you eat well without daily food decisions. It might mean scheduling important work during protected time blocks, so priorities get attention before urgent tasks take over. Implementation is ultimately about transforming yourself from someone who has good ideas into someone who makes good things happen. It's the bridge between potential and achievement, between dreams and reality. Master the psychology of implementation, and you'll join the small percentage of people who consistently turn their best decisions into their lived reality. Chapter 11. Advanced Decision-Making Techniques for Complex Situations. When you master the fundamentals of clear thinking and decision-making, you're ready for advanced techniques that handle the most complex and high-stakes situations. These are the methods used by world-class leaders, investors, and strategists when facing decisions that could make or break their careers, relationships, or organizations. These techniques require more sophisticated thinking, but they provide dramatically better results when the stakes are highest. The first advanced technique is multi-stakeholder analysis. Most decisions affect multiple people with different interests, timelines, and power levels. Simple decision-making frameworks often ignore these competing interests, leading to choices that solve one problem while creating several others. Multi-stakeholder analysis helps you find solutions that work for everyone involved, or at least minimize conflicts between different groups. Start by mapping every person or group affected by your decision. Include obvious stakeholders like family members, colleagues, and customers, but also consider indirect stakeholders like future versions of yourself, your community, and people who might be affected by precedents you set. For each stakeholder, identify their primary interests, their decision-making power, and their potential reactions to different choices. This analysis often reveals win-win solutions that weren't initially obvious. Instead of choosing between options that benefit different groups, you can often design hybrid approaches that give everyone enough of what they want to support your decision. When true win-win solutions aren't possible, stakeholder analysis helps you understand the political dynamics and build coalitions to support your preferred choice. The second advanced technique is option value thinking. In finance, an option gives you the right, but not the obligation to take a specific action in the future. This same concept applies to life decisions. Many choices create or eliminate future options, and these option values often matter more than immediate outcomes. When evaluating decisions, consider not just what each choice gives you now, but what future choices it enables or forecloses. Taking a job might provide immediate income, but it might also give you skills, relationships, and experiences that create valuable future opportunities. Conversely, some choices that look attractive in the short term might limit your future flexibility in ways that prove costly later. Preserve option value whenever possible. Choose paths that keep multiple futures open rather than committing irreversibly to single outcomes. Invest in skills that transfer across industries. Build relationships with diverse groups of people. Maintain financial flexibility. The ability to change direction when circumstances change is often more valuable than optimizing for current conditions. The third technique is red team analysis. This military concept involves creating a separate team whose job is to attack your plan and find its weaknesses. In personal decision-making, you can red team your own choices by systematically trying to prove yourself wrong. Assign yourself the role of your own worst critic. What are the strongest arguments against your preferred choice? What could go wrong that you haven't considered? What assumptions are you making that might be incorrect? What would someone who wants you to fail say about your plan? This adversarial thinking reveals blind spots that supportive analysis often misses. Take red team analysis seriously by actually trying to change your mind. Don't just go through the motions of considering objections. Genuinely attempt to find fatal flaws in your reasoning. If you can't find any significant problems, you can proceed with greater confidence. If you do find problems, you can address them before they become costly mistakes. The fourth advanced technique is dynamic decision-making. Most decision frameworks assume that you'll make one choice and stick with it. But real life often requires adjusting course as new information emerges. Dynamic decision-making involves creating decision trees that specify when and how you'll change direction based on future developments. Instead of making permanent choices, make provisional choices with predetermined decision points. If you're starting a business, decide in advance what metrics will trigger strategy changes. If you're pursuing a relationship, identify what behaviors would cause you to reassess your commitment. If you're making an investment, specify what conditions would prompt you to exit. This approach allows you to take decisive action while remaining flexible about future adjustments. You're not flip-flopping or being inconsistent. You're following a sophisticated strategy that adapts to changing circumstances while maintaining overall direction toward your goals. The fifth technique is asymmetric risk management. Most people think about risk in terms of probability times impact, but advanced decision makers also consider asymmetry. Asymmetric decisions have limited downside but unlimited upside, or they have small probability of occurring but massive impact. If they do occur, look for decisions with positive asymmetry, situations where you can risk small amounts to potentially gain large amounts. Starting a side business while keeping your day job creates positive asymmetry. You risk some time and money, but if it succeeds, the upside could be enormous. Learning new skills creates positive asymmetry because the cost is limited, but the potential benefits compound over time. Avoid decisions with negative asymmetry unless the expected payoff justifies the risk. Driving while texting has negative asymmetry. The time savings are trivial, but the potential consequences could be catastrophic. Using high levels of financial leverage has negative asymmetry. The potential gains are limited, but the potential losses could wipe you out completely. The sixth advanced technique is meta-level decision-making. Instead of just deciding what to do, decide how to decide. This involves choosing the appropriate decision-making process based on the type of decision you're facing. Different types of decisions require different approaches. Reversible decisions can be made quickly with limited analysis because you can change course if needed. Irreversible decisions require more thorough analysis because you'll live with the consequences permanently. High-impact decisions justify more time and resources than low-impact decisions. Decisions with clear precedents can follow established patterns, while novel decisions require more creative thinking. Develop a decision taxonomy that helps you match decisions to appropriate processes. This prevents you from overanalyzing trivial choices while ensuring that important decisions get the attention they deserve. It also helps you recognize when you're facing a new type of decision that requires developing new decision-making capabilities. The seventh technique is temporal decision-making. Different decisions have different optimal timing, and part of advanced decision-making involves knowing when to decide. Some decisions should be made as early as possible to maximize preparation time. Others should be delayed until the last possible moment to maximize available information. Learn to recognize timing signals that indicate when decisions are ready to be made. Early decisions work best when you have sufficient information to choose direction, but enough time to adjust course if needed. Late decisions work best when waiting provides significantly better information and the cost of delay is acceptable. Also consider decision sequencing. When facing multiple related decisions, the order in which you make them affects the options available for subsequent choices. Sometimes making the hardest decision first clarifies everything else. Sometimes making easy decisions first builds momentum for harder ones. Sometimes making reversible decisions first preserves flexibility for irreversible ones. The eighth advanced technique is probabilistic decision trees. Instead of thinking in terms of single outcomes, map out multiple possible futures with their associated probabilities and values. This allows you to calculate expected values for complex decisions with multiple potential outcomes. Create decision trees that show different possible paths your life could take based on current choices. Include both positive and negative scenarios. Estimate their probabilities and evaluate their desirability. This analysis often reveals that seemingly risky choices actually have higher expected values than safe choices when all possible outcomes are considered. Use probabilistic thinking to avoid both excessive optimism and excessive pessimism. Most people either focus only on best-case scenarios or only on worst-case scenarios. Probabilistic analysis forces you to consider the full range of possibilities and weight them appropriately based on their likelihood. These advanced techniques require practice to master, but they provide enormous advantages when facing complex, high-stakes decisions. They help you see opportunities that others miss, avoid traps that others fall into, and navigate complexity with confidence and skill. Chapter 12. Learning from mistakes and decision failures. Every decision maker fails. The difference between successful people and unsuccessful people is not that successful people make fewer mistakes, it's that they learn more from the mistakes they do make. Most people treat failures as events to forget as quickly as possible. Elite decision makers treat failures as data sources that improve their future judgment. The first step in learning from mistakes is overcoming the psychological barriers that prevent honest self-analysis. Your ego wants to protect you from the pain of admitting error, so it creates elaborate stories that blame external factors for your failures while crediting internal factors for your successes. This self-serving bias feels good in the moment, but it prevents the learning that transforms failures into wisdom. Develop the discipline to conduct honest post-mortems on your significant decisions, especially the ones that didn't work out as planned. Create a structured process for analyzing what went wrong, why it went wrong, and how you can prevent similar problems in the future. This process should feel uncomfortable because you're confronting ego-threatening information, but it's essential for growth. Start your post-mortem analysis by separating outcome from process. A good decision can have a bad outcome due to factors beyond your control, and a bad decision can have a good outcome due to luck. Focus your learning on process factors that you can control rather than outcome factors that you cannot. Ask yourself, given the information available at the time, was my decision-making process sound? Did I consider the right factors? Did I gather sufficient information? Did I account for my known biases? Did I consult appropriate advisors? Did I follow my own decision-making frameworks? These process questions reveal areas for improvement that outcome analysis alone cannot provide. The second step is categorizing your mistakes to identify patterns. Random errors are less concerning than systematic errors, because systematic errors indicate flawed thinking that will continue causing problems until corrected. Keep a decision journal that tracks not just your choices and outcomes, but also the thinking process that led to each choice. Look for patterns in your decision failures. Do you consistently underestimate how long projects will take? Do you often ignore red flags in relationships? Do you repeatedly overestimate your ability to change other people? Do you frequently choose short-term comfort over long-term benefit? These patterns reveal your specific cognitive blind spots and areas for improvement. Pay special attention to decisions where your initial instinct was correct, but you talked yourself out of it. These situations often indicate that you're overriding valuable intuitive information with flawed rational analysis. Conversely, notice decisions where your initial instinct was wrong, but careful analysis led to better choices. This helps you calibrate when to trust your gut versus when to rely on systematic thinking. The third step is understanding the difference between error types. Type 1 errors involve doing something you shouldn't do. Type 2 errors involve not doing something you should do. Most people are naturally more concerned about Type 1 errors because they're more visible and immediate. But Type 2 errors, missed opportunities, often have larger, long-term costs. Analyze your mistake patterns to see whether you tend toward excessive action or excessive caution. If you make mostly Type 1 errors, you might need to slow down your decision-making and gather more information before acting. If you make mostly Type 2 errors, you might need to become more comfortable with uncertainty and take more calculated risks. The fourth step is learning from other people's mistakes without having to make them yourself. This requires actively studying failure stories across different domains and extracting transferable lessons. Read business case studies about companies that failed. Study historical examples of strategic mistakes. Analyze relationship patterns that lead to divorce or friendship breakdowns. The key is reading these stories with a learning mindset rather than an entertainment mindset. Instead of enjoying the drama of other people's failures, focus on understanding the decision-making errors that led to those failures. What cognitive biases were involved? What information was ignored or misinterpreted? What early warning signs were missed? How could better decision-making have prevented the failure? Create a mistakes library, a collection of failure stories from different domains that illustrate common decision-making errors. Review this library regularly to keep these lessons fresh in your mind. When facing important decisions, consult your mistakes library to see whether similar situations have led others astray. The fifth step is distinguishing between necessary failures and unnecessary failures. Some failures are the inevitable cost of taking appropriate risks in pursuit of worthwhile goals. These failures teach valuable lessons and often lead to eventual success. Other failures result from poor judgment, inadequate preparation, or preventable errors. These failures are pure waste, unless they lead to learning that prevents future similar mistakes. Accept necessary failures as part of the process of achieving ambitious goals. If you're not failing, at least occasionally, you're probably not taking enough risks or pursuing sufficiently challenging objectives. But work aggressively to eliminate unnecessary failures by improving your decision-making processes and learning from others' mistakes. The sixth step is converting lessons learned into improved decision-making systems. Knowledge that remains theoretical doesn't change behavior. You must translate your failure analysis into concrete changes in how you approach future decisions. Update your decision-making frameworks based on your mistake analysis. If you consistently underestimate project timelines, build buffer time into all your estimates. If you often ignore relationship red flags, create a checklist of warning signs to consult before making commitments. If you frequently make impulsive purchases, implement a waiting period before buying anything above a certain threshold. Share your failure lessons with trusted advisors who can help you recognize when you're about to repeat past mistakes. Sometimes, you're too close to a situation to see patterns that are obvious to outside observers. Give others permission to challenge your decisions when they see you heading toward familiar failure patterns. The seventh step is teaching others about your mistakes. This serves two purposes. It helps other people avoid similar errors, and it forces you to articulate your lessons learned clearly enough to communicate them effectively. Teaching requires deeper understanding than simply experiencing, so the act of explaining your mistakes to others deepens your own learning. Consider writing about your significant failures and the lessons they taught you. This writing process forces you to think systematically about what went wrong and why. It also creates a record you can refer to when facing similar situations in the future. The eighth step is maintaining perspective about failure. Mistakes are information, not indictments of your character or ability. Everyone makes mistakes, including the most successful people you admire. The goal is not to eliminate all mistakes. That's impossible and would require avoiding all meaningful risks. The goal is to learn from mistakes faster than you make new ones, so your overall trajectory improves over time. Develop resilience to failure by maintaining a long-term perspective. Individual mistakes matter less than overall patterns of improvement. As long as you're learning from your failures and making better decisions over time, temporary setbacks are just part of the growth process. Remember that some of your greatest successes will emerge from your biggest failures. Many entrepreneurs attribute their eventual success to lessons learned from earlier business failures. Many successful relationships are built on insights gained from previous relationship mistakes. Many breakthrough innovations emerge from failed experiments that revealed unexpected possibilities. The ability to learn from mistakes and failures is one of the most valuable skills you can develop. It transforms every setback into a stepping stone and ensures that your decision-making ability improves throughout your life rather than stagnating or declining. Chapter 13. Building decision-making habits that last. Excellent decision-making is not about making perfect choices in isolated moments. It's about building systems and habits that consistently guide you toward better outcomes over time. The most successful people have decision-making habits so deeply ingrained that good choices happen automatically, without requiring constant willpower or conscious effort. Building lasting decision-making habits requires understanding how habits form and what makes them stick. A habit is a behavior that becomes automatic through repetition. The habit loop consists of a cue that triggers the behavior, the routine behavior itself, and a reward that reinforces the behavior. To build decision-making habits, you need to design each component of this loop deliberately. The first habit every clear thinker must develop is the pause habit. Before making any significant decision, automatically pause and create space for conscious thought. This pause prevents impulsive choices driven by emotion, social pressure, or cognitive biases. It's the foundation that makes all other decision-making techniques possible. Design cues that trigger your pause habit. When someone asks you to make a commitment, when you feel strong emotions about a choice, when you're considering spending significant money, when you're tempted by immediate gratification, these situations should automatically trigger a pause response. Practice saying, "Let me think about that," or "I need to sleep on it," until these responses become natural. The reward for pausing is better outcomes from more thoughtful decisions. Initially, you might need to artificially reward yourself for pausing, perhaps by acknowledging that you successfully avoided a potentially impulsive choice. Over time, the natural rewards of better decisions will reinforce the pause habit automatically. The second essential habit is the information gathering habit. Before making important decisions, automatically seek out relevant information from multiple sources. This habit prevents you from making choices based on incomplete or biased information. It also helps you recognize when you have sufficient information versus when you need to gather more. Create a mental checklist of information sources to consult for different types of decisions. For career decisions, this might include industry research, salary data, and conversations with people in similar roles. For financial decisions, this might include comparing options, reading reviews, and consulting with advisors. For relationship decisions, this might include observing behavior patterns over time and seeking input from trusted friends. The reward for information gathering is increased confidence in your decisions and better outcomes from more informed choices. Track examples of how additional information improved your decisions to reinforce this habit. The third habit is the values alignment habit. Before finalizing any decision, automatically check whether your choice aligns with your core values and long-term goals. This habit prevents you from making decisions that feel good in the moment but create problems later because they conflict with what you truly believe is important. Clarify your core values and long-term goals so you can quickly assess alignment. Write them down and review them regularly so they stay top of mind. When facing decisions, ask yourself, does this choice support the person I want to become? Will I be proud of this decision in 5 years? Does this align with my stated priorities? The reward for values alignment is reduced regret and increased satisfaction with your life direction. People who consistently make values-aligned decisions report higher levels of happiness and fulfillment, even when those decisions involve short-term sacrifices. The fourth habit is the stakeholder consideration habit. Before making decisions that affect others, automatically consider the impact on all relevant stakeholders. This habit improves your relationships and prevents choices that create unnecessary conflicts or hurt people you care about. Develop the automatic reflex to ask, who else will be affected by this decision? How will they feel about it? What are their legitimate interests in this situation? How can I minimize negative impacts while still pursuing my goals? This consideration doesn't mean letting others control your decisions, but it does mean making choices thoughtfully rather than selfishly. The reward for stakeholder consideration is better relationships and reduced conflict. People who consistently consider others' interests build stronger networks and encounter less resistance when pursuing their goals. The fifth habit is the option preservation habit. Before committing to irreversible choices, automatically look for ways to preserve future flexibility. This habit prevents you from unnecessarily limiting your future options and helps you adapt to changing circumstances. When facing major decisions, ask yourself, is this choice reversible or irreversible? What future options would this choice eliminate? Is there a way to test this choice on a smaller scale before fully committing? Can I structure this decision to preserve flexibility while still moving forward? The reward for option preservation is increased adaptability and reduced anxiety about future uncertainty. People who preserve options feel more confident about their ability to handle whatever the future brings. The sixth habit is the consequence projection habit. Before making important choices,